Welcome back to another video from the PME Coach. Today is Tuesday. Got a cup of tea, got the music on in the background, they go hand in hand. First of all, I'd like to start off by saying thank you to everybody that's followed my page so far. Feel free to share these videos to help spread this information. If you do have any questions or you'd like something to be addressed in the video, feel free to pop it in the comments below and I shall address it at some point. But today I want to talk about depression. So depression, something that everybody has suffered with in some form or another. But we don't truly understand depression. We don't understand what it is, we don't understand how we get out of it, we don't understand how to deal with it. Our current system at the moment, the way we deal with depression is through medication. And although it has some pros, wherever there's a pro there's also a con. So I do believe that medication is not the way forward to helping us deal with depression. So we need to get to the root of depression, we need to understand depression. And then once we understand it, we can truly begin to liberate ourselves from it. Now, currently we believe that depression is a mental illness. It is not a mental illness. Depression is not a mental illness, and me having gone through depression, severe depression, also gone through severe anxiety. Anybody that knows me well enough will know that I suffered serious anxiety. Growing up, they actually called me Dying Dave. My anxiety was so bad that I was actually nicknamed Dying Dave because I was always dying. But going on to depression. Now everybody's depressed in some form or another. Everybody is dealing with depression. But we need to look at this word and we need to alter a few letters, because what depression is suppression. Suppression. So depression is actually suppression and suppression of aspects of ourselves. Now the reason why I say everybody is depressed or suppressed is because we always need to go back to the root of where everything began, and everything always began in your childhood. Yes, I'm not saying you haven't experienced many traumatic events in your adult later on life, but everything roots into our childhoods. And if we just take a general look of how we teach people at the moment, how we teach our youth, how we teach our children, how we get them to disidentify with negative emotions. So what do we tell children? Don't be upset. What you're upset for? Stop crying. What we begin to do what we begin to do to our children at a very young age is teach them a separation from anything that's negative inside of them. And obviously, because as adults we're still doing it now, as human beings we are still suppressing our negative sides. Now if you look at men for an example, we wonder why men don't open up about depression, because in this current age men are taught that you're not allowed to cry, you're not allowed to be emotional, you've got to be a man, you've got to be tough, you've got to rise up. And what that does is it actually causes guys to be even further suppressed in their negative emotions. This is why guys are much worse than females, because we've been conditioned and taught that it's not manly to be vulnerable. So there's many guys out there that are deeply suffering emotional trauma and they won't actually open up and express it. And why do you think that suicide's at an all-time high when we are not able to actively engage with other people about our negative emotions? But getting back on point, we begin to disidentify from anything negative in us in children. That's taught to us through adults and through our parenting, not to cry and not to be upset. We don't actively engage and begin to understand our child's needs. Now what happens is, as children, we rely on our adults for guidance. So when we tell a child to not be upset, as a child you begin to disidentify from being upset. So what happens is a split is created. A split, in that split there becomes a suppression of all of these negative aspects or all of these emotional traumas. There becomes a suppression of them. So depression is suppression of anything that is painful in you. but because we suppress it, it never gets dealt with. So this begins as a child, this begins in our childhood. This suppression begins in our childhood, and then we carry on in our adult life. And what we're doing throughout our childhood all the way to our adult life, we are suppressing and suppressing and suppressing and suppressing and suppressing and suppressing. Now, as children, at the very start, this ball of suppressed emotion or suppressed feelings and beliefs is very small. But obviously, as we go into adult life and we keep suppressing, keep pushing, this gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And what depression is in a nutshell, is that your suppressed side to you, your suppressed shadow aspect, word jumble, has become so big and become so engulfed that you're living in a day-to-day basis of trying to resist it. You've resisted it your whole life, so by the time you get to an adult, you've accumulated so much trauma, so much resistance is going into it. And this is what depression is. When you're depressed, you wake up and every day you are in a battle with your mind. You don't want to be here, you're completely disengaged. Every day you are, there is a war going on. Depression is an internal war. There's the conscious side to you that's just like, every day is fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting this suppression of this depression, but it's so big and so engulfed that you can't contain it. And this is what drives people to suicide, to the point they get to the point where they've had enough of fighting. They've had enough of fighting against it, that it's easier to take their own lives than to wake up and battle against it every day. You see, depression, suppression is an internal battle, and this is how everybody's living. And you wonder why the world is messed up. When the world is messed up, because everybody is living a day-to-day battle with themselves. Everybody is battling themselves, because what we've done as a society and what we've done as a people is conditioned each other and ourselves to not be in touch with our negative emotions, to not be vulnerable, to not open up and feel how we truly feel. Now, if you look at it, we wonder why people are not openly engaging with other people. Well, if you take a look around, what we're doing, we're judging each other. We judge every single, or the majority of people that we're seeing in our lives. We're comparing ourselves to other people. We're trying to see whether we can out-pip somebody, whether we can be better than somebody. If we can't be better than somebody, we feel worse off. There's like an ongoing battle between human beings where we're all divided up and we all believe ourselves to be these equal little, these separate little people. And then what we're trying to do is pit this person against that person. We're walking around and we're seeing everybody as some form of like an opportunity to see whether we're a better person than the next person. And then we wonder why people are not emotionally available and why people don't open up. And the problem is because we're so judgmental. We're always judging other people. We're always judging the next person. We're always seeing flaws in people. We've created a society where everybody sees themselves as separate individuals, and because there's that separate individual, it's almost like we've drawn up a battleground, and then we wonder why we're not allowed to be emotionally vulnerable, because to be emotionally invulnerable is to put yourself at the mercy of other people. Or at least to put your pain out onto the world and to show it. You see, the whole human condition, we are insane. Human beings are insane. And what happens is, with this suppression, there is this massive emotional charge in us. And whenever this pain is touched upon, it's easier, instead of going into the emotion and dissolving it and understanding it, it's easier to express it out onto somebody. And this is where this is where your anger comes from. This is where you see 99.9% of arguments come from. This is where you see all of the conflict in the world. Where do you think the conflict is coming from? It's not because he said that or she said that or they're doing this or they're doing that. We're talking about emotional suppression because the human being hasn't truly woken up, hasn't truly understood themselves. Now I'm going to be doing many more videos on depression, on suppression, on anxiety, on panic attacks, and painting a clear picture so people can begin to heal themselves. And the biggest thing that I need to bring to light is the fact that we are not all separate. Now, for me to understand the human condition, I have had to step outside of it. So there is something greater than just being this single identity, mind construct, emotional, traumatic person. And so these videos is all about sharing that information, and these videos are going to be getting deep. These videos are already on a very surface level are still quite deep because they make you understand your own psyche, your own workings. These videos are going to call for inner integration. I'm going to be doing a lot more in-depth talks on how we deal with emotion, how we deal with negative thinking, how we deal with suppressed trauma, and how we begin to get in touch with our pain, because we need to stop suppressing it. When we stop fighting it, when we stop resisting it, and we begin to understand it, we begin to liberate ourselves from it. Again, please help me share these videos. These videos are going to have a major impact upon people, and I want to be a part of the process of helping people and the collective consciousness as a people come to self-healing, to create a better place. Anyway, till next one. Peace.